My name is Ana Moya. I am a professional development specialist here with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. And thank you for joining our PD webinar series. This is going to be what's next after the FAFSA. So I know that there has been a lot of updates. There have been a lot of updates with what's going on with the FAFSA, changes to the FAFSA, and how we will proceed. So this is information that we have as of today with what are going to be the next steps for it. Before we begin, this session is being recorded and it's going to be shared on our website under the link that's on the screen. That's going to be isaac.org/pd/on-demand webinars. If you are having trouble connecting audio through your computer, use the call me option for audio. Use the Q&A feature to ask questions. The Q&A feature, if you're on your desktop, is going to be on the bottom right corner of your screen. I know a lot of people are not as familiar with WebEx as they are with Zoom, but it is just a box with a question mark, and you're able to submit your questions. And I have all of my colleagues here on the webinar to help answer any questions you may have. You're also able to view upcoming webinars on our website. And with continuing education credits and professional development hours, they are going to be available for the webinar. We'll have the instructions and QR code at the end of this webinar. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started and try to finish in the next 45 minutes. All right, so a little bit about the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, ISAC. We are mostly known for providing Illinois students with information and assistance to help make education beyond high school accessible and affordable. This is going to be, if you are working with our ISAC core, this is the most common form that people are used to seeing us or just familiar with us. We are also known as the financial aid agency in the state. We administer scholarships and grants to students across the state of Illinois. So pretty much any state grant or scholarship that needs to be administered through the state, we are the agency that administers that program. The most common one is going to be the MAP grant, the Monetary Reward Program. That's what we are known for. And then lastly, we also provide professional development offerings on navigating the financial aid process, resources, and support. This is going to be more of me and my team, anything that is college going related. For students, we provide trainings and professional development opportunities for those professionals who work with students. All right, for the agenda for today, I'm going to go over confirmation and processing, financial aid output documents, then I'll get into verification, and then lastly, I'll go over financial aid offers. And then just because we have been putting a lot of our FAFSA simplification webinars out there, I also want to give a little shout out to our webpage. So we have the ISAC FAFSA simplification page. This is going to help professionals keep up with the latest changes with the 2024-2025 FAFSA. You would think we're almost at the end of that school cycle that we would have finalized all of the updates, but we're still putting information out there just because that's the information we're getting. This does include frequently asked questions to help you discuss information with students and families. The nice thing is a lot of these frequently asked questions, the way that they were selected, it's not just at a national level, but it's very there are questions that have to do more with the questions that we get here from Illinois counselors or Illinois practitioners. So it's a little bit more centered to what you might see. All right, so to get into confirmation and processing, the first thing is if you work with a student who has already completed their FAFSA, you will know that they got this message at the end of completing their FAFSA. It lets them know congratulations, the student's name. It lets them know that they have completed their FAFSA. It gives them what's going to happen next, which is that they're going to receive an email. Then they will get a notification once their form has been processed, and then they will receive communication from the school. Now with this, they will receive that confirmation email. This is just a confirmation email stating that they have submitted their FAFSA. I do have on another slide that the confirmation email for the submission is not going to be the same thing as it being processed. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the submission email is going to be pretty much just letting them know like, hey, congrats, you submitted your FAFSA. It'll include the data release number. It'll also include their estimated student aid index. And if they are eligible for Pell, it'll include a little bit of information about their Pell grant eligibility. Now, it might seem a lot different if you haven't kept up with FAFSA simplification, but there are a couple of changes to what we're used to. The first thing is, or biggest thing is that we are changing from expected family contribution to student aid index, so EFC to SAI. With the EFC changing to the SAI, this is something that's not totally new. Before the expected family contribution, it was the student aid index, and now we're moving towards back to student aid index. This is, as the Department of Education has said, this is to change the meaning of it and the understanding of it. So an index that reflects the evaluation of a student's approximate financial resource versus expected family contribution. This is something that the family really interpreted as being their responsibility. With the student aid index, there are a lot of differences. Before the expected family contribution, it wasn't a negative number on the back end of things. Financial aid offices, they were able to see who were the needier students. But on the front end of things, the lower number a student would get would be A0. With student aid index, the lowest number that a student might be eligible to get is going to be a negative 1,500. This is going to be a number that for those individuals who are not required to file taxes, key thing here is required to file taxes. If they just simply did not file their taxes just because they didn't file their taxes, but they did meet the IRS filing threshold, that wouldn't qualify them for an automatic 1,500 student aid index. So this is just if they were not required, they didn't meet that threshold. And this is going to be for both parents of dependent students and independent students. Again, they will automatically receive a negative student aid index of 1,500. The student aid index is a little bit different from the expected family contribution, even though we want to make that change directly. So it does contribute to a Pell Grant eligibility, but it's not going to be the sole factor for that Pell Grant eligibility. Before, when you would talk to students, depending on their expected family contribution, you would know if they would qualify for any Pell based on their expected family contribution. That is no longer going to be the case. Sometimes it is going to be easy to identify anyone who's going to be eligible for Pell. So if you're working with a student whose SAI is negative 1,500, to me, in my head, I picture it as the equivalent of it being an automatic 0 EFC, right? So we know that they would qualify for the Pell Grant. However, I'll get into really fast the Pell Grant calculations. With this, the student aid index does not indicate totally if a student is going to qualify for the Pell Grant, but it does contribute to that formula of knowing how much Pell they're going to be eligible for. With the Pell Grant calculation, so this is going to be based on the student's family size, financial information that they provided on the FAFSA, and the federal poverty guidelines. They're going to be used and be a big factor as to how a Pell Grant is calculated for students. They'll be considered for Pell Grant in the order of being maximum Pell Grant eligible. So this might be, again, those students that are negative 1,500 with their SAI. This can be a calculated Pell. This will take the maximum amount of Pell, subtract the student aid index, and it'll give you how much that student's going to be eligible for. And then the minimum Pell Grant. The minimum Pell Grant, I've gone out there to do the formula a little bit, and although I do not like math, it is really interesting because you do have to look through several charts to be able to calculate that minimum Pell. With minimum Pell, depending on what calculation they're going to be using to calculate this amount, it might be that if a student is again, either eligible for maximum calculated Pell or minimum Pell. You might also be working with a student that is not at all Pell eligible. The biggest indicator of not being Pell eligible is if the student just simply does not receive any Pell grant amount from the calculation. So if they don't receive any estimates of what they might be eligible for, then that just means very black and white that there won't be Pell eligible. Now, if you're working with a student and you know that maybe they are low income, that they would qualify for some Pell, and they did not receive a Pell Grant amount, this is going to be a good indicator for you as a professional to work with that student to try to figure out if maybe they answered something wrong on their FAFSA. With corrections, I'll touch on it on here just because students are not able to make corrections as of today. So they'll be able to make corrections to the FAFSA, any information that they completed on the FAFSA, they'll be able to make corrections. There's a lot of items that you might be working or experiencing this year with students that they are going to have to make those corrections. For example, I know on the FAFSA this year, there was a question that was asking students if they wanted to qualify or be eligible for unsubsidized loans. I forget the exact wording for it. If a student selected that yes to that question, they probably did not have to enter parental information, meaning that they automatically were kind of disqualifying themselves for other need-based federal financial aid programs. So that is something that can easily be fixed once corrections are available. The student can go in there, unselect that question, because technically just going through the FAFSA and being eligible for student aid, if they qualify for the subsidized loans, they would automatically be offered from the schools unsubsidized loans as well. So this is question is particularly for those students that would not be able to provide that parental information, does not have an unusual circumstance, and just wants to qualify for that type of aid. For the most case, that's not going to be the majority of your students. So again, that's going to be one of the items that you might see a lot this year that they have to make a correction. So a correction is going to be any updates that have to be made to the FAFSA or information on the FAFSA. On the same boat, if you are working one of the most, if you are working with students, one of the most common correction that they have to make is when they apply to more than 20 colleges. Before it used to be 10 colleges, a correction that they would have to come back and make if they want to send their information to more colleges or institutions. It's going to have to be by making a correction, coming onto the FAFSA, removing some schools, adding the new schools, and that would be in the form of the correction. Federal Student Aid has announced that starting after the first half of March, so after March 15th, that students will be able to make corrections on the FAFSA once they are processed. The key thing with this is that they are going to be processing the key thing with this is that they're going to be processing FAFSAs as they were submitted. So online forms of the FAFSA, they're going to be processing these. Two things to differentiate is we've gotten a lot of questions about, oh, well, they received their confirmation email. Can they make corrections? The confirmation email or submission confirmation email is going to be different than an email that a student will receive stating that their FAFSA has been processed. So yes, when they completed the FAFSA, they will receive an email letting them know like, hey, congrats, you've submitted it. But the second step, that is crucial to make corrections, that FAFSAs have not been processed to make corrections, those emails have not gone out yet. So students should hopefully start receiving those emails soon. Again, they did say that the first half of March, they will receive those emails confirming that their FAFSA has been processed. So again, it's going to be two different things, the submission confirmation and then process confirmation. The process confirmation email is going to be the best indicator that their FAFSA has been processed and that they're able to make those changes. All right, with some financial aid output documents, not many changes have gone through how a FAFSA gets processed. We do have the central processing processing system that helps determine if all of the data from the students' FAFSA matches what other federal agencies have documented within their files of the student. So the first thing is that a student's FAFSA, after it's been submitted, it goes through the central processing system. First, it goes through the Social Security Administration to verify that the student's Social Security number and also the student's citizenship status. It also goes through the Department of Homeland Security. This is going to be for eligible non-citizens. So if a student selected on the FAFSA that they were an eligible non-citizen, they would go through, not themselves, but their information would go through this agency. Then we have the National Student Loan Data System. This is for federal student loans in default or an overpayment. They would go through that process to see their eligibility. Then it gets into the Department of Veteran Affairs. This is going to be if the student selected that they were a veteran, so one of the 13 dependency questions. And then Department of Defense, eligibility for Iraq and Afghanistan service grant. This is something that, again, automatically happens on the back end of things if the student qualifies for it. Once it goes through the central processing system, it does sends out to output documents. So first one's going to be the FAFSA Submission Summary. With this FAFSA Submission Summary, this is going to be a document that contains basic information about a student's eligibility for federal student aid. It is, however, not a financial aid offer, especially here in the state of Illinois. This is going to be a federal form. So in the FAFSA Submission Summary, if the student is eligible for the Pell Grant and also their student aid index, they'll be able to see it on there. But if they're eligible for the MAP grant, because this is a federal form, they're not going to see it on the submission summary page. So again, it is not a financial aid offer. The financial aid offers I'll get into in a minute, but this is something that will have a more complete snapshot of what the student is going to be receiving. It also includes answers that were provided on the FAFSA. It'll include, of course, the student aid index. And then the student will receive it in an email or can easily access this through studentaid.gov. Once their FAFSA has been processed, they're able to log on to their FAFSA and see their submission summary. All right, so I don't have an official screenshot of what the submission summary email will look like, but I did find one that was online as to what a FAFSA submission summary would look like if it was done in the form of paper form. Just so you know, it contains the same elements even if it was in an email. It does look very similar in an email, so I'm comfortable putting it on here as well. So some of the items that the submission summary, FAFSA submission summary is going to include is going to be the data release number, the student aid index, and the verification code if this is something that's applicable for the students. So you'll see on here we have the arrow pointing at the box, we have the data release number. The date that you see on here, that's going to be April 5th, 2024. That's going to be the date that the notice is being sent versus the date that the FAFSA was actually submitted. And then you'll see the data release number. This is a number that serves sort of as an identification number. If they need to call a financial aid office, they can simply do so, and they'll be able to find the student using the data release number. And then the student aid index, again, it'll be on here. It'll be whatever their student aid index is. But it'll also include, as you can see on here, it includes the letter C. Not every student aid index or summary page is going to include this. This is just an example of a student who was selected for verification through the central processing system. So maybe some data did not match. It'll include that code there. They usually put out the verification code guide, where if you see that a student, whatever letter they received after their student aid index, you're able to help them identify what items they were selected for verification for. Then we have the date it was received. This is important here in the state of Illinois just because the MAP grant is on a first come, first served basis, and we do use that submission date as an indicator to hold their place in line for the student. This year, everyone is on the same boat of everything being delayed, but just for future years, we do look, we will look to that number again this year to know how to award students, but for future years, when FAFSA opens up on October 1st, this is when we really want to pay attention to first come, first serve. And then lastly, it has the application status. So it's a whole section as to what is the application status. It lets them know that their FAFSA is complete. It lets them know if they were selected for verification. The nice thing about them, it tries to give them a little bit of reassurance as to what the verification process is. And also just letting them know what items they were selected for verification. Now, although the FAFSA is letting them know that they were selected for verification, as part of the verification process, nothing really gets turned into federal student aid unless a correction needs to be made. The verification process is something that the school will also, in addition to being notified that they're selected for verification, the school will be the ones letting the student know what documentation they need to provide to satisfy that verification status. The second document that gets generated is going to be the institutional student information record. This is going to provide information on a student's FAFSA. It is available electronically for schools about the student, and this is going to be for any school that the student listed on their FAFSA. If you are working with a student and they applied to a school, they were admitted to the school, but they didn't list that school on their FAFSA, the school will not receive the student's information, their ICER. It will also contain comment codes explaining the results of the process FAFSA and if any errors were found. So again, this is going to be an indicator for them to follow up with the students so that they can verify that information. With verifying the information, I'm going to dig into verification. With verification, what about verification, right? We are in a very odd year, as I keep mentioning, but federal student aid released the information being verified for the 2024-2025 FAFSA. They've also shared that there are no changes to verification documents or what is considered acceptable documentation. But they have indicated that they will significantly be reducing the number of students who are going to be selected for verification. Part of the process with completing the FAFSA this year is that they have the DDX. With the DDX, it's going to also reduce the likelihood of a student or overall the student and the parents' financial information of being selected for verification. So that's going to be one of the items that they're expecting to have to verify less students for. For contributors who, again, have their tax information reported from the IRS, they won't be required to be verified by schools. It'll be the majority of these contributors that they won't be verified by schools. There might be special cases where they will be verified by schools, but it would be a very small percentage and depending on their situation, but it wouldn't be something that automatically happens. And then for any contributor who manually enters their tax information, they will be able to request copies of their tax return transcripts that they can submit to schools so that they're able to verify that information. With verification items, these are going to be the reasons why a student might be selected for verification. It could be to verify family size, the number enrolled in college, U.S. income tax paid or untaxed income and benefits. For non-tax filers, income earned from work, this is going to be more on the income size. And then identity statement of educational purposes. Now, for examples of acceptable documentation, this is going to be the following, depending on what it is. For family size, if they want to verify that the number of family members or the family size that was entered on the FAFSA, they're going to be able to, or the student will be asked to turn in the following documents. It could be a signed statement that includes the name and age of each household member and the relationship to the applicant. Now, with this, this is something that the family size is already being calculated from the IRS taxes. So their tax return will generate the family size automatically, but students are able to make changes on the FAFSA. So in that instance, they might be selected for family size. For the number enrolled in college, they can be asked to submit a signed statement that includes the name, age of students, applicable institutions, and then an institutional statement. For those that will be selected for verification on identity statement for educational purposes, they might be asked to submit a signed statement certifying that the federal student aid received will only be used for educational purposes. This includes, when we're talking about miscellaneous expenses, this can be transportation that would help the student get to college, right? So that is an educational expense. And also valid government photo identification. With examples of acceptable documentation continuing, we have U.S. income tax paid. This is going to be if they are selected to provide verification documents for their U.S. income tax paid. I have an outdated bullet. I'm really sorry about that. The IRS data retrieval tool, that's no longer something that is in place, but they'd be able to come back and make consent. This is going to be the updated form. They're able to come back and provide consent to have the taxes be pulled from the IRS. They can submit a tax return transcript, tax account transcripts for those who have submitted an amended tax return, or a signed copy of their tax return. For those who are non-tax filers, again, it'll be W-2s. This is for non-tax filers. This is going to include whether they met the IRS threshold or not. So they would be able to submit their W-2s. Verification of non-filing, this is something that if they provided consent on the DDX, it'll be something that automatically gets sent to the FAFSA, letting them know like, hey, in fact, we do not have any taxes on record for the student or the contributor on file for whatever year they are pulling it from. And then it could also be signed statement certifying individual is not required to file sources and amounts of income earned from work as reported on the FAFSA as well. Moving on with a little bit of the process of what happens after students' FAFSA gets submitted, I'm going to touch on professional judgment a little bit. So professional judgment is going to be the authority of the school's financial aid administrator to make adjustments in the data elements in the cost of attendance, or in the student aid index, and adjust students' dependency status. Some of the items that can be included as professional judgment, it could be a special circumstance and an unusual circumstance. I'll go over the difference between those. This is going to allow financial aid administrators to adjust data elements based on adequate documentation. It could be done on a case-by-case basis. All decisions are made on individual basis. And then it is also by choice. This is something that is at the discretion of the institution and financial aid administrator. And as long as enough documentation is provided to demonstrate that sufficient evidence has been provided in the event of an audit. With professional judgment policies, there are two categories for professional judgment: special circumstance and unusual circumstance. With special circumstance, this is going to be adjusting data elements in the cost of attendance or in the FAFSA that can impact the student aid calculation. So this is going to be anything that can be from, maybe there's a change in income, there's a change in family size from 2022. So those elements that would impact the student aid index. If there's a change of income, they are able to make those updates. With an unusual circumstance, this is going to be adjusting a student's dependency status based on a unique situation. So If the student is considered a dependent student, they're not able to say yes to one of the 13 dependency questions, but they're also not able to provide parental information that that would disqualify them for a lot of the need-based financial aid programs. So with unusual circumstances, usually asking for professional judgment on their dependency status. So if you know that the student has an unusual circumstance, such as their parents being incarcerated, not being in touch or knowing the whereabouts of their parents or biological parents, or if they're fleeing an abusive home, those are the most common ones that we see. That would be an unusual circumstance. They'd be able to apply for professional judgment so that they can have their dependency status be overridden and go back to qualifying for those need-based programs. The schools cannot maintain a policy of denying all professional judgment requests. And then schools are required to have a list of adequate documentation that can be used for making the request. And even when they have the list of adequate documentation for making the request, this is something that, again, it's being looked at on a case-by-case basis. If you have two students who are applying for unusual circumstance, they might need to provide different documentation depending on what that list requires them to do. So it is going to be something that they look at on a case-by-case basis. All right, after they go through either the verification process or professional judgment process, or even if they don't have to do either of those, they will hopefully get through the financial aid offers. And I say hopefully because this is something that they have to be admitted to the school. They also have to have listed the school on the FAFSA in order for them to receive the financial aid offer. What used to be known as a financial aid award letter, now it's a financial aid offer. This is just a little bit of an update that happened a couple years ago. With processing delays, federal student aid has confirmed colleges will start receiving ICER data in the first half of March. I know we were at a conference last week and where there were a lot of financial aid administrators and they still were voicing their concerns that they hadn't received the ICER data. Just as an update with financial aid offers, it'll be a little bit of a delay with this. So financial aid offers are going to be delayed for many students. Students will be able to make corrections and or updates to their FAFSA in the first half of March as well, once the forms have been processed. Keep in mind, you might be working with a student that in order for them to receive that financial aid offer, they have to make those corrections. The same example I used earlier, where if you have a student who selected yes to unsubsidized, being eligible for unsubsidized loan question on the FAFSA, they will need to make the corrections on the FAFSA in order for them to receive the financial aid offer. With financial aid offers, there is still no set format for financial aid offers, but there are a few key things that you want your student to look for. This is going to be the source and the type of aid, the terms of enrollment that they are qualifying for this aid, and then total financial aid offered or being offered to the students. So they want to make sure that they are being able to identify this information on their financial aid offer. There's a couple of things that the Department of Education is working towards having more formatted, but the types of things that get added to a financial aid offer or the type of financial aid that the student is eligible for, that's something that doesn't follow the same format. Once the students start receiving the financial aid offers, which hopefully can be really soon, we do have a financial aid comparison tool. On our website, this is going to be the financial aid worksheet. They're able to pull information from their financial aid offer and identify what is being offered and compare those offers. With financial aid offers, the financial aid administrator at the college, they'll package all available aid and they'll send an offer for consideration to the student. A couple of things that you want to guide the student to look for is what is the cost of attendance. if you are able to meet with the student and explain that cost of attendance and what the cost of attendance includes, financial aid offers are supposed to make that very transparent now. But just make sure that the student is aware of that terminology. I am big on you don't know what you don't know. So teaching the students what to know about what they don't know. So what is the cost of attendance? What is their student aid index? What is their aid eligibility? Are they eligible for just student loans? Are they eligible for need-based programs? Was their financial need met? What types of aid are included? Do they have a lot of gift aid, so aid that they do not have to pay back versus self-help aid? And what is their out-of-pocket cost? Their out-of-pocket cost is going to be the money that they are actually going to be paying to the school in order to attend. If their financial need is not met, if whatever they need to pay as part of the cost of attendance, or if they're just planning on paying their tuition and mandatory fees, what's going to be their out-of-pocket cost? With things to consider, you want to consider ratio of gift aid to self-help aid. So generally packages with more gift aid than loans will be more appealing. One thing that students usually don't keep in mind, or even us as professionals that we often forget, is that loans are considered financial aid. A lot of students only consider financial aid that is going to be free and they don't have to pay back, but financial aid offices do consider aid to be loans. So with the two types of aid is going to be gift aid, money that does not have to be paid back, and then self-help aid, which is going to be loans and work study, where they do have to do something in order to be eligible for that money. With loans, they would have to pay that money back, right? How much of the cost of attendance will the student have to pay? With the loan terms, if they are being offered loans, they want to make sure that they're comparing the types of loans. A lot of, again, financial aid offers are going to include Parent Plus loans, which is going to be the parent's responsibility. So they want to make sure that they are viewing those terms, because even if they're like, you know what, yes, I will have this Parent Plus loan, it is not something that the student gets to decide. It is something that the parent will also have to go through an additional process. So they want to make sure of that. They want to verify whatever their financial aid gap is. How can they produce that additional funds to cover the unmet financial need? And with the financial aid gap, they want to also think about future packages. Is all of the part of the award renewable? A lot of colleges and institutions, they provide maybe a freshman or incoming freshman scholarship that is not something that's going to be renewed their sophomore year. So if they're thinking about their financial aid gap now, they also want to think about what's being renewed, because then that will help them determine what their financial aid gap might be in the future years. And then with outside scholarships, are all of the outside scholarships that they know that they should be awarded included in their financial aid offer? If not, so that they can follow up and see what's going on. After they receive the financial aid offer, this is going to be a little bit of the timeline of the process. So a student needs to meet the following requirements for an award to actually be dispersed. So they want to submit all paperwork and information that's required. This is going to be especially important for students who get selected for verification, and also students who might go through the professional judgment process. Then they get to accept the awards. The biggest thing with accepting awards is going to be the student loans that they're offered. They'll get to accept those student loans. If they are accepting student loans, they want to complete the entrance counseling. They want to make arrangements to clear holds set on a student account. This is going to be more for students who are already in college, or they have to make sure that they clear any holds on their student account. So if they owe any past charges on that student's account, they want to make sure that they get that cleared out. They want to make sure that they enroll in classes and meet satisfactory academic progress. A big thing with the Pell Grant and MAP Grant is that students, although we form it and we talk about it in the form that it is based on their financial need, that they don't need to do anything. The one thing that they do need to do for the Pell Grant or the MAP grant to be eligible for it is make satisfactory academic progress with that. So they want to make sure that they're doing that. And with part of enrolling in classes, they want to make sure if they want to receive the full amount, that's going to depend on the number of credit hours that they are enrolling for. So they want to make sure that they enroll in those classes in order for them to receive the financial aid. And then the method and time of disbursement is going to vary depending on the type of financial aid that needs to be disbursed. Again, if the student is completing or looking to obtain their subsidized and unsubsidized loan, they need to go through the steps accordingly. If they have a parent who is willing to take on a Parent Plus loan, then they have to go through that process accordingly, depending on the financial aid that's the type of financial aid, the method and time will be different. With financial aid offers, before they even get into disbursements, with financial aid offers, if they're not enough to meet the student's need, they can also submit an appeal to the financial aid office. The appeals are going to be more to see if there's any additional financial aid available that the student might be eligible for, if they maybe thought or were under the impression that they were going to get a different scholarship. I know a lot of institutions have like tiers of scholarship, presidential scholarship, and so on, depending on the student's GPA. So if the student thought that they were going to be eligible for a different one, they can provide or file an appeal for it. They can submit an appeal to the financial aid office, but this is going to be with each institution. They'll handle the appeals differently. Institutions are required to have documentation of a circumstance to make an adjustment. Students may be required to complete a special circumstance or financial aid appeal form. This is going to be the most common thing. Even though we say they may be required to do so, a lot of financial aid offices do. And then students cannot make financial aid appeals to the Department of Education or ISAC. So if the student doesn't like their financial aid offer, they cannot make an appeal with us or the Department of Education. Financial aid appeals are really up to the discretion of the institution. This is not something that, even though we're known as the financial aid people here in the state of Illinois, this is not something that they would go through us. Other reasons for appeals might be that the student's not offered aid that they are eligible for. Student was offered more aid at a similar institution. They can kind of leverage that. They just got to make sure that with any appeals that it takes place before they submit the deposit, letting the school know that they are committing to their institution. Reasons for appeals, this is going to be once a student is already in college going into future semesters, if they're not meeting the satisfactory academic progress, and let's say they didn't make or meet satisfactory academic progress for the following year, so their MAP eligibility or Pell Grant eligibility is being taken away, they can file an appeal for that. This is one of the most common ones as well. It just looks like them asking them or making a promise as to how they're going to make that promise or that progress. Institutions are not required to accept the appeal, even if another institution granted the student an appeal. This is something that institutions are going to have their own rules and regulations with this. Now, there is a tool out there for students who want to file an appeal. It's going to be Swift, Form Swift or Swift Student. It's going to be a digital resource to provide financial aid appeal letter templates for students seeking professional judgments. So students can learn more about this on our website. If you want to navigate through the website, check it out so that you're able to work with students if they need to file that appeal. Now, I do have 1 minute left, so we do have the First Generation Scholars Network. If you have a student who is a first generation student, have them go through our student portal at .isec.org/firstgen so they can sign up for this and receive additional support as a first generation student. We also have the FAFSA Communication Toolkit from ISAC. This is going to be a resource to guide. This is a resource guide to assist practitioners in communicating with families. So there's a couple of templates on there to help them connect with stakeholders, templates of emails to families in English and Spanish, email to volunteers, robocall scripts in English and Spanish, flyers, social media posts in English and Spanish. So make sure that you check that out. And then lastly, just to finish on time, for CE and PD requests, please provide your feedback for today's session by completing an evaluation. If you want to request CE credits or PD hours, you do have to complete that evaluation. It has to be done by 5:30 p.m. on Thursday, March 14th. The QR code is on the screen, but also